Greetings, true believers. Tiki here.
And Blue Dragon 5.
And, folks, this is a troubled time in the Marvel canon, not just in the Civil War that has broken out within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but also for our dearly beloved creator himself, Mr. Stan Lee, who this past week, his beloved wife, Joan Lee, passed away at the age of 93, I believe, Dragon. I hope I'm right about
95,
that.
actually. They had new information. 95.
95. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, folks, this isn't obviously a huge celebrity passing like a Robin Williams or a Carrie Fisher, but this woman shaped so much of Marvel, and she was just the backbone of one of the most creative men in the industry and one of the guys that we just look up to so much and we just respect so much. Like, this was Stan Lee's rock. She was Stan Lee's rock. So it only felt appropriate, especially because of the timing where, as one Marvel character appropriately enters the Marvel Cinematic Universe, a beloved Marvel icon departs us. And Dragon, it's just so bittersweet. You know what I mean? The day that Homecoming released, Joan Lee passed away. It's almost bitingly poetic. I don't know. So, yes, we're here to pay tribute to the woman behind the man who created Spider-Man and all kinds of different other beloved Marvel characters. Dragon, I'm drowning myself. Please save me.
Folks, believe me, this year has been literally a killer. It is. We've lost a lot of good people in the beginning of this year. It's been really rough. Middle of this year, by this point, I'm saying it's been getting really rough, and all throughout this year, we've been losing some great people, and I never would have imagined we'd lose Joan Lee, because one of the things you never want to, we never wanted to make this. We never want to have to make a video like this. Same thing with any great kind of figure in the history of not of pop culture, comics, or storytelling in general. You never want to lose an icon like this. And the great thing about Joan Lee is that Joan Lee has always been, as Tiki said, kind of the woman behind the man, Stan the man, if you will, and that she is what I like to think of as the great unsung hero of Marvel. Now, of course, we're not the first ones to point this out or to say this, but we got to give Joan Lee her due, because here's the thing. To be realistic here is, unfortunately, only like your diehard Marvel fans have heard the story a bunch of times about how Joan Lee factors into Marvel in a very important way, which we'll get to right after we get to our initial.
Make a John Lee Hancock biography about it.
Well, T, we kind of have something a little better, almost. We have something almost better currently. There's this documentary about Stan Lee. It's called Stan Lee with Great Power, which stars, of course, Stan Lee, and Joan Lee factors in almost as a co-star. In fact, she is in through the whole thing, and she's a key player. So I encourage everyone right at the get-go of this before we dive into it here. Everyone, honor the Lee family by watching, because it covers everything in Stan Lee's life, and it's from whenever the documentary was made. I want to say it's 2011 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It's an excellent documentary. It adds some great layers of Stan Lee you never really knew about the guy, and it really shows the great love story between him and his wife throughout the thing. It's a beautiful work. Stan Lee with Great Power. That's what it's.
And Dragon, I mean, just in terms of putting a pop culture spin on this whole thing, I honestly feel like the real life Carl Fredricksen has lost his Ellie.
In many ways, Joan Lee, in many ways, was, again, I don't want to just kind of belittle the death by making these comic comparisons here, but it feels very fitting given it's Marvel and it's encompassed Stan Lee's life in such a profound way. She was his Mary Jane and his Gwen Stacy, quite literally as Gwen Stacy in terms of. Well, let's get to our reaction before we really continue to reminisce there. So
you and I kind of had different. Yeah, we had different timelines. It was actually about an hour before, and I think I was just browsing Facebook and just kind of randomly saw an article that that Joan Lee had passed away, and Dragon, it was like I was all getting ready to go see Homecoming. I had bought my tickets in advance and everything, and so while Homecoming was great, it's just again, it's just kind of gonna kind of be one of those weird, sort of ironic, poetic things that she would have passed the day that Homecoming opens to the public, because of course Spider-Man, more than any other character, is kind of like the embodiment of Stan Lee. We'll see that when we talk about the ending to the animated series that you just showed me. But so that's the gist of it for me. I just saw it on Facebook, and it just sort of cast a bit of a melancholy shadow over my first time viewing Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah, for me, again, Homecoming does factor in absolutely to when I heard the news. So I saw Homecoming, and we the group I was seeing the movie with, some buddies of mine, we were all sitting next to each other watching the movie, all having a really good time. And then, what you do when you when the post credits are coming, basically, so there's usually one guy's going to see if there is like a post credit scene, which you guys do assume there is, but there's always that chance that you're going to have like a Whedon pulled on you, like from Age of Ultron. We're like, oh no, very post end close. No post credit scene at the very end. So I'm sure that he was checking that on his phone or something. So we have the mid credit scene. Then right after that, my guy here, he's checking his phone to see if there's something at the very end. And then he's just kind of struck by kind of the news, I guess, like Yahoo News or something, just something that informed him while he was in the midst of doing that. And then he just kind of looked very seriously at the rest of us, and he said, Stan Lee's wife died. Of course, I know Joan Lee from the various stories, and again, with great power. And I've known her from various stories told by Stan Lee. So I've always kind of, this is going to sound really silly, just so I can bring it up because it's appropriate. When Stan Lee went to Comic-Con, I've seen Stan Lee twice, and it was either the first time or the second time. No, probably first. I usually like the people I really respect at Comic-Con. I like to give them like a little thank you note, like sometimes some fan art, something.
Right, yeah.
What I did with Stan Lee is I drew him in the middle, and I had, because again, I always been fascinated by kind of the relationship the creators has. I basically did like homaging Spider-Man, that great Spider-Man thing. It was like Spider-Man's in the middle, and around him are heads of his loved ones, and like all the supporting characters. So I had various drawings of various people from Stan Lee's life, which I painstakingly looked over, like just trying to get the drawing right. So Stan's in the middle, looking really proud, so the arms crossed, all prideful and stuff, looking all cool. And off to the side, you had people like Jack Kirby, John Romita Sr. I had J.C. Lee, who you rarely see, and I thought that I have the Lee family in there. So I have his daughter J.C. Lee, and the grown version of her, and I also have Joan Lee there right next to Stan, like on the left side. There's have like all the loved ones there. So again, I'm familiar with Joan Lee and the family for from that history of storytelling of all the interviews we've had with Stan Lee, like Stan Lee and Kevin Smith's interview, which of course is a memorable one that factors in Joan Lee on the DVD. So
of course.
Anyway, so when I hear this news, I'm like, oh my God, no! I'm like, it's like after such the height of fiction met by crushing reality. That's the only way I can really describe the moment. It's like the height of kind of elation, like, yeah, Spider-Man, he's back, and we finally have Spider-Man in the MCU, kind of planting his feet firmly in the universe. And it's like, man, that was a fun experience. And then you have like crushing reality, like it's like almost like a cruel trade-off in the world. Like, I'm gonna give you can have Spider-Man, but it's like coming at a great cost. Like, oh no, the breath was taken out of me. I was just kind of processing, and we were all just kind of taken back and processing, because I had shown them like a week or so, like maybe the previous month of June, I showed them that Stan Lee documentary, and they all had a familiarity with Joan Lee, so it's like it really kind of struck all of us.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I obviously, Dragon, I think you are going to be more familiar with her in general because you're way more of kind of the hardcore nitty-gritty Marvel fan than I am. But just from the things I've been able to look up from her over the years, definitely seemed like a very classy woman, very, very well spoken for. Very, not afraid to poke fun of Stan Lee, which is always nice, always fun. And then Stan Lee himself, just the interviews he says talking about Joan Lee, like, he tells the story with such a boyish charm, you know what I mean? Like, well, I got out of the military and I thought I needed a wife, so that's what I did. I went and found myself a wife.
It's such a beautiful story that Stan tells how he met Joan.
He just tells it so matter-of-factly. But the Dragon, you literally just now showed me the ending of the Spider-Man animated series from the 90s, which features a cameo by the real Stan Lee in an awesome way, which, like I said, Dragon, I feel like that, I'll link this down in the description, too, if folks want to check it out. it's such a great kind of encapsulation of how Spider-Man has affected Stan Lee and how Stan Lee has affected Spider-Man and how they're basically one and the same. It's a beautiful tribute. And of course, I'm terribly sorry, Dragon. Give me the name of the show.
Yeah, I should probably explain. So Tiki really hasn't gone through the entire Spider-Man animated series. He's a little lost on how Joan Lee factors in here. So Joan Lee, they created a character. I forget if it was created the ground up from this. At the very least, Joan Lee has had not as many as Stan Lee. She's had a few cameos, mostly in animation. She's done a few voice roles, and the most prominent voice role, she actually got a character in Spider-Man the animated series as Madam Web, who essentially was kind of a cryptic mentor of Spider-Man, kind of like an Obi-Wan Kenobi, if you will.
Which is really, really cool because in a lot of ways, in real life, Joan Lee was inspiring Stan Lee, and in turn, that would inspire the creation of Spider-Man. So it's all kind of a full circle story there.
She was absolutely his muse in various ways, let's just kind of let's hit upon like the big one, the moment everyone's talking about. And what I was getting at the beginning there, it's like now everyone's going on about this story. Only your diehard comic fans knew this, and importantly, I just hope that people now are getting to know this story. I'm happy with that. At the same time, I wish we really should have appreciated. I wish everyone kind of learned the story beforehand. It's like again, that's why it's like that. That's why she's like that great unsung hero in comics. And just to go over the story here for prosperity's sake. So, way back in the day, and I'm going to add like a few details that people don't really bring up a lot with this story. So very, very simply, just in the era of the comics, of course, you had timely comics way back in the beginning of Marvel, before it was even called Marvel. That introduces Cap, Submariner, and the robotic Human Torch. So those are the three that Stan Lee did not create, or those aren't the Marvel era that Stan Lee ushered in. And after that was a wartime years. It was like in the 40s. So after the war, obviously, comics with heroes were in a big decline. And what happened is that's when we had the transition to romance stories to westerns. Basically, we could do comics like Archie comics, but we couldn't do any superheroes because they were losing their steam. They were losing their thunder. DC was just kind of clinging on with all they had because DC mostly was bombarded by the Frederick Wortham attacks on the comics industry, like McCarthy hearings, but for comics. And that's why Batman, of all characters, kept going through like the really weird sci-fi phase in the 50s, and that's how we kind of like the campy era of Batman in the comics, all because they're rolling with it. Where Marvel is just like this is where I get the Stan Lee and all this story. I'm going somewhere with it, folks. Is that DC? They're rolling with the punches. Stan Lee's saying, you know what, I don't like what I'm creating here. I'm done. Basically, Martin Goodman is his publisher.
The famous story of Stan Lee was like he was brought on to do temp work for like a summer.
Yeah, and he ended up as kind of the big head honcho, the big editor-in-chief.
Dragon, I'm not to compare myself to Stan Lee because I'm totally not, but like it kind of reminds me of how I got brought in at the last minute as a guest judge on the So You Want to Be an Imagineer competition, and then I made it into a YouTube channel that's almost got 600 subscribers. I'm so proud. Anyways, go ahead.
So, Stan Lee's getting kind of fed up with kind of the stuff that in the comics industry, again, like DC, he doesn't want to roll with it anymore because, I'm not really doing good stories. And basically Martin Goodman's telling him, look, we're just doing, basically we're not going to experiment with comics as a medium. We're just going to put out funny books. We're not really going to, don't put as much thought in character development. If people just want to see like funny stuff happening. Again, it's basically it's style over substance. Stan Lee doesn't really want any part of that. Like who appreciates comics? That was kind of the mentality in the day from Martin Goodman. So Stan Lee, he's fair. You know what? He's seriously contemplating quitting, and he's airing this out to his confidant for many years, of course, Joan Lee, and Joan gives him the best advice in the world, and just Stanley always lovingly reminisces of like why he loves his wife so much.
Oh yeah.
She points out something that he didn't consider that again shapes the course of comics as an industry as we know it in this little moment here. It's such a profound moment where she says, Stan, if you're gonna quit, why don't you do the book you want to do? I mean, in worst case scenario, they fire you and you want to quit anyways. Do the book you want to do as kind of like a last, kind of a last stand out the door almost. He does, and it's the Fantastic Four. It goes over fantastically, and Marvel. Again, the Marvel era is born. I forget when they actually had the Marvel name on the books because when it went from Timely Marvel.
Timely, yeah.
I forget when that was, but the point is, the Marvel era is really ushered in from Fantastic Four onward because of that moment.
I want to say Captain. I mean, obviously, the Fantastic Four was the first mainstream Marvel series, so I want to say it was right around that point.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Right. So again, that's kind of that's the huge contribution to the medium that she has, and of course, it's the constant inspiration in various aspects. And speaking of one of those aspects, to kind of go back to kind of how Stan met Joan in the first place, because we're going a little all over the place with this, but harken back to that. Of course, Joan Lee famously, she kind of was the inspiration for Gwen Stacy.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Stan Lee had the best pickup line ever, as Steve was starting the story earlier on. That when Stan comes back from war. He's looking for a wife, and he's essentially set up on a blind date. And before he gets to the blind date, he's kind of sidetracked, and he bumps into Joan, and he has like the best. He looks at her, and again, he's dumbstruck because again, it's kind of like looks very much like Gwen Stacy. Again, it's just like utter beauty and perfection in a woman through Stan's eyes here, and Stan has the best line ever, saying, like, "You're so beautiful. You're the face I've been drawing for so many years."
Right. Oh God. That's such a pickup line. And then, of course, I love when he tells the story. He's like, "I don't even know what happened to the girl I was supposed to
meet." and here's just to show you how wonderful, how truly wonderful this relationship is because she was married to someone at the time, at that moment.
Yeah, and then 6 weeks later, it's like Stan Lee, the homewrecker. Excelsior!
In 6 weeks, not only was it here's the beauty of it. In 6 weeks, he went to, I believe she was in Nevada at the time, in Reno, Nevada, and they was, the point is, in 6 weeks, he won her over so much she actually got divorced, then married to him. It was in the same building, in like separate rooms. So she divorced her other husband, which essentially I believe is that she puts it mainly it was a marriage so she can keep her citizenship in the country, if I'm right.
A marriage of convenience.
Yes, I believe that's yes.
That is
anyway, because marrying English. So she divorces one man, and within an hour, she marries the love of her life. I mean, that's an amazing story. Only Stan Lee, you can't even write that story, And Stan Lee,
that literally sounds like something that would happen in a Stan Lee comic. Oh man.
Oh yeah, and again, she's always been his muse, and then something that just to hit a point with Great Powers. And Great Powers is this wonderful little story here, where Stan and Joan are basically telling the story, and Stan's telling the story how. He had this typewriter that through all his career at Marvel, he had written all the great stories on. He loved this typewriter to pieces. And one day, Joan was just really angry about something. And he was such a being married for as long as they had, near 70 years. They were married for like 60 something to 70 years. And in that time, again, you don't remember all the arguments. Then when they're going through it, they're saying, well, probably over something silly. Like she really hated like how he cluttered up the room with his stuff. All his comic stuff. They had like baskets of paper, reams of paper and stuff all over the room. So she gets really mad at him, and Stan thinks she's just going to calm down. Basically, she grabs the typewriter. Stan's holding his heart in his chest. Essentially, he's like on the edge of his seat, and she smashes it to the ground in a billion pieces. And he just, oh god! And again, they when they're telling the story, it's in a very loving capacity. Obviously, at that time, it just kind of blew their minds at the time, but it's. It just shows you that she had a fire in her, that Joan Lee.
Absolutely.
At the same time, and this is something Kevin Smith really hit upon, that, and again, I don't mean just to keep hyping it up. I'm saying if you really want to get to know Joan Lee, I would recommend everyone Great Power. But there's this beautiful moment where she's just kind of overcome with emotion in the movie where, I'm sorry, something Kevin Smith has been saying in reference to her passing is that he always said when he talked to Joan Lee, especially recently, he did a recent interview with Joan Lee in which they kind of went through this. Joan Lee said, basically, it's always when everyone basically how do you feel about your husband's success? Essentially, that's the main question, and. Everyone always says Spider-Man this, Spider-Man that, Spider-Man, Spider-Man this, and they don't. And she got emotional in this moment. She said, but they don't know how truly good a writer he is. I mean, he's so much. Basically, saying he's so much more than. These
Stan Lee certainly has a style on all his own, and it's a corny style, and it might not hold up too well for modern critics and whatnot. But god damn, is that style full of charm? You know, it's like just charm and personality just leaps off the page of any Stan Lee written work.
the best thing about Stanley, whether his works hold up as well. Again, the '60s these are mind blowing. Like again, these are like laying the foundation of what we do with comics now. That's why it's always important. But I'm saying even if you look back at it now, you got to admit these are really good ideas. Like Stanley's always been like a brilliant idea man. That's kind of thing I aspire to, like being an idea man. That's the one thing I like. This hopefully my wildest dreams, I like to be a good idea man. And with that, and the reason I'm bringing it up is that this is harking back to this moment you actually get. She mentions like the poetry that Stan writes, and in the documentary, you get to see her react live to one of his poems because Stanley wrote almost every day. And this is like for Valentine's Day or their anniversary. I can't quite recall. Basically, on stationery, like he drew like a little. Again, it's not like he's no artist, but he's he's more writer than an artist. He drew like a little spider, the little spider-like logo essentially, Spider-Man mask in a circle.
That is fucking
on
adorable.
The paper. And she reads the poem. But basically, it's a loving poem about being married to the most woman he loves most in this world. And she hides her face because she's crying. It's so beautiful. And she just loves this man so much. And it's like, oh my
god, you're gonna make me cry, Dragon. Wow, that's so.
That's what I'm saying. Tiki never. And like I'm gonna get to my point here. What I want to say with why this relationship is so special in comics.
Soon, but.
Sure. I mean, we're getting to the end there.
Yeah.
So in comics, I want everyone to keep this in mind. In comics, with writers and artists, both individually, writers and artists, especially when they work together as teams, the spouses and the women behind the men and the spouses, depending if they're married or not, are absolutely key. Like, look, I'm going to give you some of the greatest pairings of writers and artists, and to show you how pivotal these women behind the men are. Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, one of my favorite recent teams. Scott Snyder, his wife is a nurse. He constantly calls his wife asking details for the stories about like kind of medical stuff that would have much to her annoyance, but he does that. And Greg Capullo was in a really bad place before Batman. His girlfriend saved his life essentially and got him on the mend. And with that, they kind of met each other. Snyder and Capullo, that other relationship gets started, and again, they're making beautiful Batman together. And this one directly parallels the Stan Lee thing. This one's short of Stan Lee and Joan Lee. This is the other most moving relationship in comics, possibly. Jack Kirby and Roz Kirby. Jack Kirby's
appropriate that it be a Stan Lee and then Jack Kirby. Yeah,
exactly. See, the way this worked is that Jack Kirby, he's like a blue collar artist. If you've ever seen one, the most professional blue collar, like the architect of artists, if you will. But here's the thing: Roz ran things. She ran things. She was the brains behind the whole organization. Like she's the one who kind of come up with like your Comic-Con setup in a way. She would like.
Sure, yeah. I Dragon. I read that I forget exactly what it's called. That one Marvel book, the one with the blue cover. I'm sorry, I'm kind of blanking on the name of it.
How to Draw the Marvel Way?
No. It's like a big.
Do you mean Marvel Comics, the story, like the untold story?
Yeah, it's like the untold story. Yeah, and Roz Kirby definitely gets a lot of praise in that book for kind of like being a big person that kind of designed the infrastructure of the company.
Because it's so beautiful that she could be really motherly. Fans would literally visit. This is back in the day when this could happen. Fans would literally visit Jack Kirby at his house. Like if you were just a fan of the comics, you could stroll by and say, "Oh, hello, Mr. Kirby," and you'd be welcomed in. And Roz Kirby would make you food. She'd make everyone sandwiches. And
that's amazing.
And sometimes people would be able to. You could play chess with Jack Kirby.
Wow!
It was a fun time, and that's as sweet motherly as she could be. She was his most virulent in the best way. She was like his most staunch defender, and like she defended the man like there was no tomorrow. Like even like when people misprinted like some of Stanley, thinking that Stanley might have been taking all the credit.
Sure.
She was the one. She would call Stanley the next day and ask him what's going on, and he have to explain. Oh no, please, Roz, they have to understand they misquoted me, which was just true. And it's like. You always have to remember that, folks. I mean, these women are key in the comics industry, and Joan Lee again, just that's one of the most loving relationships in comics. Or Roz, like the most sturdy relationship in comics, and nowadays we're still having it with our young guys like Snyder and Capullo. And I want to hit one thing with the animated thing. I think that's really all I got, and we'll wrap up.
Okay.
So the reason I directed Tiki to that clip, folks, I just want to emphasize why I've been watching that clip recently, is that in Spider-Man animated series, it ends on that moment, that beautiful moment where not only is it Spider-Man meets creator, but it's also again Madam Web being kind of that mentor to Spider-Man. And again, Joan Lee really brought this great kind of regal quality to Madam Web. Like this woman has been around, she knows her stuff, and it was also kind of modeled after her. And it was just this beautiful moment in that last scene, like right before it's like, hey, we're going off the find Mary Jane. That's the very ending. But like right before that, you have this beautiful like moment of intersection that represents their relationship so well. Is that it's like it's a fun little cutesy high school tease of their relationship. It's that Stan Lee has this beautiful moment against both of them doing the voice, and it's Stan Lee saying, "Who is that exotic lady?"
Right.
Just getting a glimpse at Madam Web, having no idea what's going on because she just shows up that basically she's Spider-Man's ride, essentially. And then after Spider-Man leaves, he goes, "Farewell, Spider-Man. Good luck to you." And then as Spider-Man and Madam
How am I
Web
going to get down? Maybe I'll just sit around and wait for the Fantastic Four to swing by.
and on the way to the end of the episode, Madam Web and Spider-Man have this beautiful moment together. It's like the other side of that relationship, and Spider-Man in between them. But again, also represents very much kind of that connecting point between the real life and then the fiction. Spider-Man says, "Man, that's Stan Lee's one heck of a guy, isn't he? What a nice guy that Stan Lee is." And then she has this sweet line. And it's like such a wonderfully meta line when they're recording it. You gotta imagine. And she never for a moment did not love this man. She says, "I think he is truly special."
Oh,
God,
can we just get a jaw?
Oh yeah, I mean, bear in mind, Joan Lee, she endured a lot of stuff in her life. There was some tragedy she endured, and she was a really strong woman too. I want to hit that as well in the end here. I mean, being someone who being an immigrant, it's being someone from outside the country.
That would be an immigrant, yes.
Sorry, I'm getting. The point is, she had trouble adopting children because she and Stan they had a child. They had J.C. Lee, and then they had another child who unfortunately passed away. She passed away a few days after she was born, and then they tried to adopt. And the immigration agencies for adoption, they gave her the runaround. It was like, and it's a beautiful moment in the documentary where they really have this bit where she's, again, Stanley got really mad at how they basically said, you would, because obviously she'd be a very fit parent, because again, they wanted to have more children, but they just physically couldn't. And again, just because she was out, there was a religious thing, because she had to convert to Judaism and stuff, in which there was like a lot of stupid reasons they wouldn't allow her to adopt a child. And that's like some of the injustice that she suffered. She still remains like the most staunch, again, kind of the most staunch kind of creative muse who again took it all in stride.
Yep.
And Marvel does a very nice thing. This takes us right to now. Is that Marvel did a nice little tribute to at least give Joan Lee kind of those 5 minutes of just like acknowledging the woman who kind of made it all possible. Where Stan Lee it's called Remembering Joan Lee. I encourage everyone to check it out to hear like kind of Stan Lee in this year kind of speaking about Joan Lee, and it's really nice. It's like him kind of winning over the audience with again the How They Met story, and it's really it's really sweet.
So I guess my final thoughts, folks. Of course, I'm glad that we got to get this whole tribute out to the woman herself, but I think we need to focus back around to the man. I'm genuinely worried about Stan Lee. I don't want to go into a dark place here, but I want everyone to. I don't want to flood him with tweets or anything like that, but I just want everyone to send good vibes his way. That's all you need to do. Just if you believe in prayer, have him in your prayers. You know what I mean? And if you believe in good vibes, just send him good vibes because the man has done so much for us. He's basically created the entire fandom and comic empire, which we kind of make our livelihood here on YouTube. Well, make our livelihood is arguable, but anyways, I digress. So as I said, folks, the real life Carl Fredricksen has lost his Ellie this week, and I think we just all need to be in his corner and be there with him and cheer him on. And I can't help but Stan is all I come back to when it gets to this. I'm just really hope that Stan is holding up. So
I think it's
that's all I got, Dragon. So just make this the final thoughts.
Sure. I think it's fitting that I think it's great. Like one of the last year we got a Stan Lee cameo that did feature Joan Lee, which is the only time she was ever featured in live action as a cameo, which it was from X-Men Apocalypse. It was like a beautiful little, it was a very poignant cameo. It was like it was like an end of the world type shot where like missiles were firing at. You saw the reflection on Stan's glasses, and he was in front of their home. In front of their home, Stanley's just caressing, like holding his wife as if we're at the end of the world. Ending on that kind of romantic imagery. It's just like it's nice that she got like a moment in the spotlight as well as she's and probably like at the end at an end of the world moment that Stanley's in part two. He would want.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Right.
Like I feel, yeah, it's a great like little kind of like closing the book in terms of you want these two are always going to be in each other's arms like that. They're going to be like they were there at the beginning and they're going to be there at the end. It's kind of what that moment communicates, especially looking at it now. And just as final thing here again, it's a shame that we've lost Joan Lee. She's survived by Stan and J.C. Lee. Our sincere and deepest condolences. And guys, we got to show Stan Lee more love than we ever had before. He deserves it. I mean, how your heart has to go out to the guy. And again, like anyone going through this loss, not just like because he's Stanley, but just because he's a human guy. Because the love that he had with this woman, we need to be there for each other. And Stanley, he's created all these characters who've been with us in our darkest, most lonely moments, and it's like those moments where we needed a hero. We need to be a hero to Stan Lee by being there for him when he's like, he's lost that figure in his life. It's like Peter Parker losing an Uncle Ben. It's like we need to be there for that. For that, we need to be here. We need to be there for him more than ever. So, rest in peace, Joan Lee.
Well said, sir. Well said. All right, folks. Well, like I said, as one Marvel icon passes on, sadly, we have a new Marvel icon joining the MCU. So life goes on in the circle of life and all that good stuff. But yes, Joan Lee will be sadly missed. And as Dragon said, our thoughts and prayers go out to the entire extended Lee family, especially Stan himself. And may Joan Lee be excelsoring up in heaven right now. I don't know if that's lame. Excelsior!